Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. If you watch my channel on a regular basis, you probably saw the video that I recently did on reactionary baits and why reactionary baits are so good at triggering inactive fish into biting. And I got a lot of comments on that video regarding if there's other things that you can do with your baits to trigger those reactions from the fish. And a lot of the questions were geared specifically to color. Are there specific colors that can trigger a non-aggressive fish into eating just based on it making them turning them into a much more aggressive nature? And I do feel strongly that there are a few colors out there that do a very good job at getting the fish fired up. I'm not going to sit here and say that color is as important as creating movement with your bait to trigger an inactive fish into biting through a reactionary method. But I do think that color can be one of the key elements into getting a fish to fully commit to your bait. Meaning, a lot of times fish might follow your bait. A lot of times fish will come up and like swirl on it or nip on it, but not fully commit to it. But I do think that color can be very important in terms of getting them to commit, especially when you are talking about an inactive fish that needs to be triggered into biting. So every little thing you can do will help with that. And I do think that there are a couple of colors that really play a major factor. And a lot of these colors uh, really kind of seem like they do a very good job at triggering certain species of bass. So I want to talk about these colors. I want to share with you how I like to have them on my baits because it's not necessarily all about having an entire bait of a single color. A lot of times I like to just have certain placement of that color because I do think that that makes a big difference. So we're going to talk about that. Before I do get into it though, I want to remind you guys that I do a bunch of lake breakdowns with fishthemoment.com. So if you're looking for a little bit of help on a lake that you have in your area, or maybe a lake that you're going to for an upcoming trip, you might want to check out the lake breakdowns that I do. We provide you 40 specific waypoints that will really help educate you on how to break down that specific lake for that specific time of year. So check those out. Also, if you just want to support the channel in another way and you haven't subscribed yet, please hit that subscriber button. It's a great way to show your support for the channel for tips like this one. All right, so when you're talking about color, a lot of times your color that's going to generate a good reaction strike from the fish is a bright color that's going to create a it's going to make the fish just snap. It really is what happens. It's almost like it gets them to commit to it. Now, out of all of the colors I have here, there is one dark color. And I do think anytime you're talking about a dark color, there is something with black that does a very good job at getting those fish to commit. And when I say black, it's really more, I think, about silhouette than anything. I think black is one of the best colors that stands out when you're talking about high sun conditions, when you're talking about overcast conditions. Black does a very good job at creating the illusion of something there, but it doesn't have the color to actually match the hatch, as they like to say. But there is something with black, specifically with smallmouth bass. Smallmouth love black. As much as they love bright colors, they also love just a straight, solid black anything, whether it's a black small little swim bait, a black Ned rig, a black hair jig. Smallmouth love black. Now, I will also say that I think largemouth are very inclined to bite black as well. So it's not necessarily a color that's going to pop and do anything crazy, but there is something specific about black that get the fish to commit. And that could just be the fact that they have a good look at the object because it really does stand out under all conditions. So generally speaking, I will throw a lot of black colors regardless of species, regardless of water conditions. So you want to keep that in mind. But if you're going to go the opposite end of the spectrum, you really got to start looking at your bright colors to trigger fish into striking. And a lot of times I'm not necessarily always talking about a bright chartreuse bait like this, because chartreuse, in my opinion, is the #1 color that gets fish to trigger or triggers fish into biting. And a lot of studies I've read say that chartreuse actually shows up as white underwater, and that's what a lot of fish are going to see. But I really do like to have chartreuse in the bait. Now, A whole chartreuse bait can be very good, but if you're talking about a color that's going to get them to just jump and really become into an aggressive nature, chartreuse is it. Now I do like it, like I said, primarily as the main color like this, but when I really like it to shine is when I've just got small amounts like on this Berkeley Stunna. So the whole bottom is going to be chartreuse, and on a bait like a jerk bait where the bait is suspended generally above the fish, when they're looking up at it, that chartreuse is the color that they're going to see. So I don't necessarily need an entire chartreuse bait. I just want the chartreuse to be visible in one of those areas where I know the fish are going to see it. But I absolutely love to have chartreuse on the bellies of my baits when you're talking about fishing for smallmouth and spotted bass. It is an absolute killer triggering color to create those reaction strikes that we're after. I've seen a lot of days where I'm on a good jerkbait bite and somebody else is throwing a different color and they're not catching them. And it really comes down to that chartreuse belly. I'll have somebody else in the boat change to chartreuse on the belly as well, and all of a sudden they go to catching them too. So there's something really about that. Now, another color that I love, and to do it in the same manner, is a blaze orange. I love to have a little bit of orange anytime I'm fishing for largemouth or if I'm fishing for smallmouth. It seems like that orange, again, is a big triggering method in terms of getting those fish to commit. But again, I generally don't like to throw a whole orange bait. I like to have a little bit somewhere on the belly, just like this custom crank right here, just somewhere on the belly that's going to do something that gives me a little bit of flash. You know, in this case, if I'm bringing this bait through the water column, what's going to happen is this bait's just going to flash a little bit. And as it's swimming along through the bottom, the fish get a glimpse of that orange, but it's not overwhelming. And there's something about having that bright color that just flashes, that triggers them. But it's really, really good for largemouth as well as smallmouth, specifically smallmouth that are in some of your darker colored water. A lot of lakes have a lot of tannic color to it, a lot of your rivers. And if you got a little bit of orange, that's really a good way to go. For your largemouth, I feel like they like that orange, especially during the pre-spawn period. The last color that I absolutely love to throw, and I've talked about it, is hot pink. Now again, it does not have to be a full bait that is completely pink, just like this buzzbait, but I like to have little bits of pink somewhere, whether it's on, you know, a pearl colored jerkbait, like soft jerkbait like this, where you can see I've got a little bit of pink on the end. It really just comes into play where I'm looking for something that's going to create a little bit of flash and give the fish something to look at. Now, I will say pink for me, especially when you're talking about like methylate worms, like I consider pink methylate as well, or your pink robo worms, anything along that pink barrier is very, very good for largemouth. In my opinion, if I could choose one color for largemouth that would trigger them into biting year round, especially during the hot water periods, the summer months like right now, it's pink. I don't know why they love, you know, these pink methylate worms and the pink different like drop shot robo worms, but there's something to do with pink during the pre-spawn and into the summer months when the water is at its warmest phase. I do feel like pink is really the best when it comes to your largemouth. But those are the best triggering colors that I know of. Now, I do want to point out too that your pearl whites are fantastic colors as well all around. Now, I know a lot of people would say, well, there's nothing special about that because it mimics the forage. But pearl white is such a bright white that it actually does stand out, and it creates a lot of really good reactionary strikes from all species of bass. If I had to choose, I'd say for spotted bass and largemouth more than smallmouth, but it really does hold up as a phenomenal color as well. And I want to point out, if you guys watch my channel on a regular basis, you watch the lures I fish with in my tournaments, you'll probably see me adding color to a lot of baits. I just won the Mississippi River event using a green pumpkin, for the most part, green pumpkin 5-inch max scent, the general, and I was dipping the tail in chartreuse. It's really important for me to have those little key elements of color. Most crankbaits that I'll choose will have a little bit of one of those bright colors on it. Most jerkbaits I throw have a little bit. And if they don't, I tend to add it either with a dip that I've got, the dye dips, or whether I've got marker pens that I can add it to. But I honestly feel like it's the main factor in getting fish to fully commit to a bait when they're inactive. So give it a try, guys. Let me know, do you have some colors as well that seem to be very good in terms of generating reaction strikes from inactive fish? If you've got some other ones, throw it up in the comment section so we can learn from you guys as well. But it's one of those things that I really do think color plays a very important role, more so in these reactionary colors versus the overall color of the bait. I do think when you have prime little spots that stand out a lot, it really helps the bait create that reaction strike from the fish. So give it a try. Let me know what you think. Hopefully this helps you. I appreciate you watching. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it. Stay tuned. New video coming out tomorrow.